All right, here we are. It's a new year, and there's a lot of the sort of new year.
New you.
Exactly. New year, new you. And so many people make as a part of their sort of New Year's resolution thing, I'm going to work harder at...
Marriage.
Yeah, I mean, marriage. I'm going to eat less. I'm going to work out more. I'm going to do these. My behavior hasn't been a certain way, but darn it, this is the year where I'm going to change my behavior by working really hard, and I'm going to get a new marriage.
Yep.
At the end of the day, if I just work hard doing these things. And like so many behavior modification efforts, it ends in hurt, frustration, and a sense of hopelessness that can end up leaving your marriage in a worse place than it was when it began.
So, what do we do about that? Let's get into that.
Before we jump into today's show, I wanted to ask you to check out our website, brand new website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. That's marriagebydesignpodcast.com. All of our episodes are available there on that website. Love to have you pop over there, follow us there, and check it out.
If you have a topic that you're wanting more information on or you have questions about, you can search on our website by topic, which is a really great feature.
That's right. And more than anything, guys, please share this with someone that would find it meaningful for them. Without any more delay, let's get to the show. Hey, everybody. I'm Nathan Warnock.
I'm Andrea Warnock, and you've joined us for the Marriage by Design podcast, a time that we get to talk to you about God's design for marriage, what the Bible has to say about that, and how we live that out practically.
So this, usually you give the little intro.
Oh,
So
yeah, I guess I don't know. I hand it over to you today.
Today, we're going to dig into something that I think really damages a lot of relationships and really damages a lot of individuals when it comes to marriage. And this topic, you had a comment on, I think it was our Wednesday check-in last week about how we handle conflict in our marriage. Somebody had asked about my spouse and I fight a lot, and I'd given some advice on that, and somebody commented and said, this is really applicable to any disagreement that you have.
Sure.
And of course, the person that posted that comment's right. But the point is, man, is it not harder? Like when I get into a conflict with some guy in the grocery store, it can be easier to de-escalate that than it can be for you and I to de-escalate a situation, because it's like there's just more pride and emotion involved. And that translates over into what we're going to talk about today. Behavior modification is kind of one of those self-therapy terms that we have integrated into daily conversation in the postmodern age. And yeah, it quote unquote applies to most anything. And what we're talking about here is when we see a certain behavior in our lives or a certain outcome that we want in our lives. Let's say we're struggling in our marriage and we want our marriage to improve. And so we know that our marriage would improve because maybe our spouse has told us, or maybe we've just identified it in our own lives. If I do 1, 2, 3, and 4, then my marriage will get better.
Yep.
And so what we do is we start trying to just pull up our big boy pants and do 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah, it's a checklist, right?
Yeah, and if I can just grit through it, I'll get the desired outcome that I want. And man, it sounds really good in practice or in theory, but in practice, it's a prison of our own making.
Yeah, our marriages are not a workout routine. You can't have a prescription for things to do to get the result that you want. It's not a to-do list equals results.
Right.
So that's It just doesn't work. It just doesn't work.
Right. So the bottom line for today's episode is you have two choices. If you found this podcast episode, and we're so glad that you did, you really have two choices before you. One is to just try harder to fix the things that your spouse says you need to fix the things in your spouse that you think your spouse needs to fix. Or two is to identify that there's something deeper going on here. And rather than just try and modify your behavior, maybe there's a heart shift, a mindset shift that needs to take place in order to achieve the results that you want. And in the case of marriage, so many folks want to try and behavior modify their marriage instead of recognizing that, man, if I just, one, would figure out what God's design for marriage is, and two, really just allow the truth of that design for marriage to penetrate into my heart, so many of these things we work really hard to do would happen naturally as a result of understanding the reality behind it. I want to use an example that is one that a lot of Christian guys and women, increasingly women, really struggle with, and that's the idea of pornography. And this is obviously something that is super pervasive in society today. It's something that has become almost just socially acceptable for men in particular, and it's not. It's a sin issue. But what I find is even within the church, what we want to do is put blockers on our devices, get accountability partners, not take my phone with me when I go take a shower or go to the bathroom. I'm going to do these behaviors, and those behaviors are going to prevent me from stumbling in this area.
Yeah.
But
go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, I want your input on this. I was just going to say, but
go ahead.
The thing we forget is that pornography is a outward viewing pornography is an outward behavior of an inside heart issue, a heart issue that the Bible names by name. It's called lust. And when we have a heart issue where we desire to consume that sexually explicit material, it really doesn't matter if I have pop-up blocker or if I have blockers on my computer or I do all of these things, because of course the evil that is within us, the temptation that attempts to draw us away in those moments, one, inspires us to find ways around those behavior modification things, or makes them unsustainable in the long term.
Right.
So I'm not saying those things in and of themselves are bad. I'm saying
that's what I was going to say is they're good, but while you're also allowing the Lord to work on your heart. So
yeah, the heart issue has to come first.
Yeah.
Then those issues are tools.
Yeah, because behavior modification focuses on the fruit.
Exactly.
Whereas submission to God's design focuses on the root. And you can't behavior modify if you're not tending to the root. You're not going to have fruit if you don't have a root that's healthy. So
right.
So yeah, if you're just wanting to burn the bridges of any possible way that you would ever see porn, you still have a heart that has a problem.
Right.
And you still have probably struggles with impure thoughts, and you're going to at some point be presented with an opportunity to view porn or something like that, and because it's everywhere.
Right.
And if you haven't gone to the root of the problem, that behavior, because you have the opportunity, you haven't allowed God to work on your heart with that.
Right. Yeah. So fast forward now to the idea of marriage in general. It's very similar. Like, there is a temptation to view marriage as a 50-50 contract, right? When Andrea and I enter into our marriage, she has a responsibility to treat me a certain way. I have a responsibility to treat her a certain way. And if one or the other of us is lacking in our performance, then that's the reason why the marriage isn't working. And it becomes a performative relationship where maybe I recognize, like, man, I don't always speak to her the way that I should. I told her that I would take out the trash and I didn't. The kids needed a bath and I just didn't feel like doing it, so I didn't do it. And my performance is lacking. And I got to get better because I need to fulfill my 50% of the obligation. And on the other side, maybe Andrea is looking at that and going, he's not performing, therefore I don't have to. Right? If he's going to do 40% of his 50% in our marriage, then I'm going to do 40% of the 50%. And oftentimes, ladies in particular, this is more often the stance that you take. Okay, he's only doing 40% of our relationship, so I need to treat him in a way that inspires him to do that other.
Yeah, I'm going to parent
10%.
him. I'm going to parent him into,
right, or nag him, or be just an all-out unkind individual to him, or any of those sort of manipulative things that we do,
withholding things. Sure,
right. But here's the problem. Marriage isn't a contract. It wasn't designed as a contract. Society has sort of turned it into a contract, which both demeans what it means to be a man and what it means to be a woman, and demeans what it means to be married. And so instead of looking at marriage as a 50-50 contract, what the Bible would say is what marriage actually is, according to God's design, is a covenant that we make with the Lord for the benefit of the other person. Like when we enter into marriage, we're making a covenant alongside that person to the Lord on Andrea's behalf. So what I mean by that is when I gave my vows, although I did give my vows to Andrea, my vows were really a statement to the Lord of what I was going to do for Andrea because of who the Lord is. Right? Like Andrea doesn't deserve all of the things that the Lord asks me to do.
For sure not.
To her.
Right.
And Nathan doesn't deserve all the things that the Lord asks Andrea to do for me. Neither of us deserve it. And we're in a society where that's the only question that's asked. Like even within Christian circles, it amazes me how often couples come to us for marriage mentoring, and what we get is something like one of them will lead off and say, well, here's the things that are frustrating me about my spouse. And the spouse will go, the adult equivalent of, oh yeah, well, you're never going to believe what he does or she does.
Right.
And the implication even in that setting is, well, if this person would just fix their behavior, then I'd fix my behavior. And that's based on this idea that, well, they're not holding up their end of the bargain, so I'm not holding up my end of the bargain. That is where behavior modification comes in, right there. And it's based on a lie. Like our behavior towards our spouse has nothing to do with their behavior to us.
Yeah, that's a hard thing to grasp. Not treating our spouse the way we think they deserve based on the way they treat us or whatever else. Because that's such a natural response, to treat somebody the way they deserve to be treated. But instead, treating them the way the Lord has asked us to treat them.
Yeah, so that's right. And the only way we can do that is by prayerfully moving into a shift in our mentality about what marriage is. Like marriage is a covenant I made to the Lord, and so because of that, all the things that I do with regards to Andrea are really my own love sacrifices to God.
Right.
And because God made Andrea, and because God made Andrea, and Andrea is his daughter, I have a huge responsibility to him in the way that I treat her, beside the fact that I made a covenant to him to treat her that way. So now it's an obedience issue and a love and respect issue towards not just Andrea, but towards primarily the Lord.
Yeah, and for people saying like, I can't do that, or that's not fair, or whatever, how do we treat our kids? The way that they deserve? No, because our kids are frequently deserving of being treated horribly if we're thinking about the way that they treat us, right? They're ungrateful. They don't do things that they're asked to do. They're disobedient. They're lazy. I mean, not all the time, right? But we as parents, and I'm saying the universal we, any decent parent is treating their children in a way that they way better than they deserve, right? Than they give back. So if we can do that for our children, we can also do that for our spouse.
Right. So how do we make this pivot, and what does this actually look like? I would submit to you that when you stop looking at your marriage as being a relationship between you and your spouse and start allowing the Lord to show you that your marriage is a representation of his relationship with you, and I mean really prayerfully meditating on that and beginning to recognize the reality of what it means to be married, so many of the things that you struggle with behavior-wise will begin to evaporate. So, for example, it's one thing to recognize in your own life, hey, I yell too much at my spouse. This year, I resolve no yelling at my spouse. But when my spouse, not Andrea, of course, but when my spouse does something that makes me angry and I'm tempted to yell, in that moment, this moment in time where I said, this year I'm not yelling at my spouse, is going to be overcome by the emotion of the moment. Or I'm going to just grind, bite a hole through my cheek to not do the thing I want, which of course long-term is not sustainable. But if I instead begin to recognize like, man, Andrea is a daughter of the Most High God, one that he set aside from the beginning of time to spend her life with me, and I get the privilege of spending my life with her, and I'm going to answer to the Lord for the way that I led in our marriage. Lord, help me see Andrea the way you see Andrea. Then when she does something to make me angry, the mentality is different. The heart attitude is different. And it's not behavior modification. It's that I've now recognized a truth, a spiritual truth in the world around me, and the Holy Spirit uses that spiritual truth to allow me to walk in the Spirit instead of walking in my flesh.
Yeah, it's really doing the heart work, not doing the behavior work, really. And if we're just expecting, if we're getting angry about something and just whatever, chewing a hole in your cheek or walking away, you're not dealing with the root problem. The root problem is your anger.
Right.
Why are you getting, why are you getting angry? Maybe it's a righteous anger, but why are you getting angry, and how do you work that out with the Lord? And then I was just talking to my daughter about this. Every time that we are angry or impatient or any of those things, right, that are not godly, is an opportunity to allow the Lord to do a work in us, rather than seeing those as frustrating and just trying to, react in the right way this time.
Right. Instead,
seeing that as, okay, I'm going to look at how can I allow the Lord to work in my heart, rather than focusing on the other person or not behaving toward the other person the way I want to, or whatever. Focusing more on your heart issue than what's the behavior that's going on.
Yeah, that's great. I think my closing, as we kind of bring this episode to a close, oftentimes we know in Ephesians, and I'm sure if you've been married and are a Christian and have been married more than 10 minutes, you have heard that nasty S word that often comes up in marriage, submission. And tragically, I think there's a lot of individuals that have used this as a battering ram towards women. But if you look in Ephesians, it does say, wives, submit to your husbands. But the verse immediately before that talks about all of us submitting to one another as to the Lord.
Right.
And that's the point. Like when we think of submission, it's not one over or under another. Yes, the reality of the matter is when you have two people in a marriage, God loves us enough to say, hey, I need somebody to know they ultimately hold the responsible for the tenor and decisions made in the marriage. Mm-hmm. Man, you're the one that's taking responsibility for that. But before that is this understanding that both Andrea and I are submitted, not her to me or me to her first and foremost, but both of us to God.
Right.
And so as we step into that submission to him and humble ourselves before him and recognize he's actually the boss, it allows me to look at marriage in a totally different light, where I don't have to just go and grind my way through marriage, but instead, and I can, guys, I'm telling this to you as someone that for 8 years in our marriage did just try and grit it out, did just try and do the right thing, and what ended up happening, and happens for so many in this situation, is you turn to deceit and hypocrisy because you want to look good, but you're not, and you're failing in your behavior modification, and so the only option you have is to try and hide it.
Yeah, and a lot of resentment too, because your thoughts have not changed. You're still focused on what you deserve,
right,
and not on what you deserve according to God's scale of justice.
Right. But when we put ourselves under God's authority first, it enables us to sort of look past our spouse in a way.
Yeah.
Like, when I'm submitted to God first and Andrea does wrong by me, I am able to just look right past that to God and give grace because God gave me grace.
Right. Okay, so just real quick before we close, Ezekiel 36:26 talks about replacing a heart of stone with a heart of flesh. And what that means is God promises to give his people a new spirit in him through him, not by our own works, not by our own gritting through it, but in his strength. And that's what we're working for through our salvation, is allowing our flesh, allowing our old selves, our heart of stone, to be replaced by the way God sees our spouse. And that then you're not looking at your behavior, but you're really desiring to see your spouse the way God sees them. And that naturally changes your marriage, your thoughts, your actions, your words, and your whole outlook on who you are married to.
Yeah, so here's the takeaway I want you to think about this week. God's design is for your good and for his glory, not just for a smoother marriage, not just for smoother parenting. And when we recognize that our calling is for his glory and for our good, then it's easier for us to just relax and follow his leading in relationship, not in striving. If we can truly allow that to sink in, the daily, I got to do this and I got to do this, the kind of walking on eggshells that behavior modification creates, you can be free from that. Mm-hmm. Because the Lord will show you through his word the good that he has for you and the ways in which your sacrifice for your spouse brings him glory, and you will desire it because of who he is, not because of what your spouse does or doesn't do.
Yeah, that's great.
All right. Thank you so much for joining us. Always appreciate you guys subscribing, sharing with others that you think would benefit from this podcast. Love to have you do that again. Otherwise, until next time, so grateful to have you here. Remember, God is for your marriage.
Thanks so much for listening. We just wanted to say, if you have a comment, a question, something that you're struggling with or need prayer, please reach out to us. You can get a hold of us by emailing marriagebydesignpodcast@gmail.com, or of course you can comment on any of our social media and we will get back to you. But if you have something private, feel free to email us. We're happy to personally respond to you.
That's right. And we do respond to every comment that we receive, either through our website, through YouTube, through our social medias, which leads me to feel free to pop over to our website, marriagebydesignpodcast.com. You can leave comments on any of our videos through that site. We would love to be able to connect with you, but please don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you just need prayer, you need someone to hear what you're going through, we're here for the Marriage by Design community, so feel free to reach out anytime. Until then, guys, thank you so much for joining us. We'll talk to you next time.